The New Orleans Saints have restructured Derek Carr's contract in order to free up cap space. Now, on the surface, you might think, okay, well, that's not that bad. Well, what they have done is they've converted the majority of Carr's salary into a signing bonus. He's actually going to get the full $40 million that was his contract this year. They're spreading out the cap hit. They will save $30.996 million in the process. Ian Rappaport reported this. It was actually confirmed by Nick Underhill of NewOrleans.football. If the Saints fully restructure the contract, look, Carr will get the $30 million base salary and his $10 million signing bonus. That'll free up the cap space, which is what they ultimately decided to do. Now, what this does, again, I mentioned it frees up over $30 million this year. Great. That's fine. If you're in win now mode, I don't think the Saints are good enough to be in win now mode. But what this does is it makes it a lot harder to move on from Derek Carr in the future. Now, it doesn't marry the Saints to Derek Carr in 2026. However, if they want to move on from him, it'll come with $59 million in dead cap space if you move on from him in 2026. So initially when I heard the report, they've restructured him, they've freed up salary cap, I'm like, okay, fine, we've seen the Saints do this before, but now it almost seems like Derek Carr is going to be here for 2 more seasons. Because what did everybody talk about before this move was made? Hey, if you want to move on from Derek Carr, you can do it. It's going to cost you $51 million in dead cap hit this offseason. Okay, well, if you wait till next offseason, it'll be, $21 million. You'll take half the hit this year, half next year. You're almost in the same boat in 2026. As a matter of fact, you're $8 million more. And that was one of the main reasons anyone who was on the side of, hey, you can't let Derek Carr go this offseason, for what it's worth, I wanted the Saints to just cut ties. Rip off the Band-Aid, take the $51 million cap hit, one offseason, you're in the clear in 2026. But you're not. You didn't solve any of your problems. You just backloaded it to another year. This is what Mickey Loomis always does. So it works for now, but 12 months from now, it's an even bigger issue. Look, this is nothing more than typical Mickey Loomis. Kicking the can down the road. This team is always in win now mode. The problem is you don't have a roster good enough to be in win now mode. Look at your offensive line. So far, they haven't made any big-time moves. We'll see what they do in the draft. Free agency's open. We'll see all that. Right now, though, if all you did was re-sign the guys you had last year, left to right, you would have Taliesin Fuaga, who I love. I think that was a really good first-round pick. Lucas Patrick at left guard. Eric McCoy at center. He's a solid player. That's a good piece. Cesar Ruiz at right guard, who you drafted. You didn't know if he was going to play center or guard. He's been very inconsistent. Sometimes he's been good. Sometimes he's been very, very bad. And then Trevor Penning at right tackle, who fans have wanted to get rid of for 3 years now. You have Derek Carr. You free up $30 million. But what are you going to go get with that $30 million? Right now, your top 2 receivers are Chris Olave, who has had a number of concussions. We don't even know how much longer he's going to be in this league. And Rashid Shaheed, who's coming off a season-ending injury as well. We talked about it going into last season. The Saints' issue at wide receiver 3. Mason Tipton, Cedric Wilson. Luckily, never thought I would say this, that luckily you were able to sign Marquez Valdez-Scantling halfway through the year. He was the only receiver that showed any sort of signs of being a playmaker on this team through the back half of the year. It becomes really important to keep him, which I don't know if the Saints are going to do. You have Kamara at running back, but again, you just cut Jamal Williams. So at running back, you have Alvin Kamara. Behind him, you have Kendre Miller, who can't seem to stay healthy, and even when he is healthy, he's been inconsistent at best. And Jordan Mims, who's carried the ball like 20 times in his entire career. That's just on the offensive side of things. We'll get into defensive tackle later in the show. They shored that up a little bit here in free agency via trade. We'll get into corner in a minute as well, because big news dropped there. You don't have any depth on defense, even at the spots that you are good at. You need an edge rusher. You need a defensive tackle next to Brian Bresee. Because of the news we'll talk about a little bit later, you're paper thin at corner. You have no safeties outside of Tyrann Mathieu. Jordan Howden is your next best guy, who's a former late-round pick who showed promise year one, wasn't that great last year. Mickey Loomis continues to put this team in win-now mode. But the problem is, you're not in win-now mode. You don't have the roster to be in win-now mode. Who can you go get? Because I don't know if you guys know this. Earlier this morning, Chris Godwin, who maybe the Saints had a shot of signing him with the salary cap space they freed up, re-signed with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for 3 years. Every team in the NFC South is getting better. Falcons have made moves. The Panthers have made moves. You have not. All you have done is backload Derek Carr's contract once again. It's going to put you in cap hell in 2026. I don't know if Kellen Moore had a hand in any of this. I imagine he did. I imagine he was allowed to at least choose his quarterback. But I don't really get it. And look, the most troubling part about all of this that I have failed to mention is that reports have come out that Derek Carr was open to looking elsewhere for the 2025 season. He was open to a trade. He said that he was willing to, reports came out that he was willing to be traded. Kat Terrell of ESPN reported this. It said, sticking with Carr didn't appear to be certainty when the Saints initially hired Kellen Moore, who sounded non-committal. We talked about that in his press conference. He said, I think Derek Carr is a good quarterback in this league when asked if that was the quarterback of the future. He was never committed to that. And then other NFL sources believe that Carr was open to testing the free agent market in recent weeks or being shipped off somewhere via trade. Apparently, though, the Saints are the ones that didn't want to do this. And I guess you can look at it and say, okay, the Saints' hands are tied a little bit. Maybe, but maybe not. Now, if you were to cut Carr this offseason, do you roll with Spencer Rattler? You're at 9. I mean, you're not in the top 5. Maybe if you had a top 5 pick, top 3 pick, this would have gone a little different if you could get a Cam Ward, a Shedeur Sanders. Because if you cut Derek Carr, who do you go get? You sign Aaron Rodgers for a 1-year rental? I don't think so. I don't think that's going to work. You guys know my opinion of Aaron Rodgers. You go overpay for Sam Darnold, pay him $40 million a year, who I personally do not think is worth it. I've seen enough of Sam Darnold to know that was probably a flash in the pan in Minnesota. I believe the real Sam Darnold is who we saw at the end of the year, the last 2 or 3 games of the regular season, and that awful playoff game. I think that's who the real Sam Darnold is. Now, we'll find out because somebody's going to pick him up, likely the Seattle Seahawks. But maybe the Saints were thinking, this is our best option. We're kind of tied up in this anyways. We'll take a big cap hit if we cut him this year. We cut him next year. We're kind of in the same boat with this restructuring. Let's see if we can make some sort of run this year. And maybe you can, but you got to go get guys. You got to hit on all of your draft picks because you need every single position. And you got to go get free agents. I just mentioned that the Bucs, Falcons, and Panthers are all getting better. You cannot get left behind in the NFC South. You have had the privilege for a number of years, while your roster hasn't been the best, of saying, hey, we may have a shot at winning the division because the NFC South has been so weak. I'm not sure how weak it is anymore. Baker Mayfield looks like a franchise quarterback. While Bryce Young has been shaky, he looked better after coming back in from being benched from Andy Dalton. And the Falcons admitted their mistake with Kirk Cousins. They went with Michael Penix Jr. He looked like a rookie, but he showed promise as well. The Saints are the only ones that don't seem to have a clue what they're going to do at quarterback for the foreseeable future. Maybe it is Derek Carr, but the move's it's a little confusing move. It's good in the short term, bad in the long term, and I think the Saints need to be building for long-term success instead of short-term because, again, I don't think their roster's good enough to be making moves like this. We'll find out, though, but certainly something to watch. They freed up a little bit of cap space. We'll see what the Saints do in free agency or if they get their name in the trade markets as well, which they have done already.
Hey, it's on. Thanks for watching Hunt on Saints. Before you leave, help us out a little bit. Hit that like button, leave your comments in the section below, and hit that subscribe button so you get all our content right here from Hunt on Saints. We'll see you next time.